Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Chris Beers. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg today, ahead of NATO's 75th anniversary summit. We'll tell you what's on the summit's agenda. Another Boeing plane gets in trouble. A 757 loses a wheel during takeoff in Los Angeles. We have the full story. Columbia University dismisses 3 deans over alleged anti-Semitic conversations months after the Ivy League institution was rocked by pro-Palestinian protests. A new report by federal regulators says that middlemen control drug prices in the U.S. It states consumers and smaller pharmacies are being negatively impacted. Find out how. Scandal in China. At least 2 state-owned entities have been found using oil tankers to transport both coal-derived oil and edible oil without any cleaning procedure in between. The Republican National Committee has unveiled a new policy platform backed by former President Trump. The draft platform, titled Make America Great Again, comes ahead of the Republican National Convention next week. The 16-page document includes plans to eliminate taxes on tips, make the U.S. a, quote, manufacturing superpower, and protect Social Security. It also proposes reducing the cost of housing, education, and health care. On national security, it advises strengthening the military and building a missile defense shield over the U.S., similar to Israel's Iron Dome. A section of the border suggests carrying out the largest deportation of illegal immigrants in American history. It also includes plans to pause funding for schools promoting critical race theory and gender ideology. The platform was first released in an email from the Trump campaign, followed by an announcement from the RNC. Former GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley announced today that she's releasing her delegates to the Republican National Committee. Her actions come ahead of next week's RNC convention in Milwaukee. In releasing the delegates she earned during her campaign, Haley says she wants them to vote for Trump. The former governor of South Carolina stated in May that she plans to support Trump despite their differences during the campaign. Haley says the convention is a time for party unity. According to a former campaign spokesperson, Haley received 97 delegates during the Republican primaries. And yesterday, a federal judge ruled that protesters can't march through a security zone at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. The American Civil Liberties Union and the Coalition to March on the RNC 2024 filed a lawsuit last month against the city. The groups had alleged that Milwaukee's plan for protesters violated their free speech rights. The judge ruled that demonstrators have a right to protest at the RNC. However, he added that they don't have a right to do so in any way they choose. And President Biden is standing firm against calls for him to drop out of the race. He's also calling for an end to the intra-party drama that has torn apart Democrats since his debate performance. Some key lawmakers are expressing support for him to remain in the 2024 presidential race.
I've heard concerns from colleagues. I think that the president needs to address them, along with, more importantly, frankly, the concerns that I've heard from people around the country. But I think he is energetically and effectively addressing those concerns, and he needs to continue to make that case. The American people earn their support.
Do you personally have any concerns about his mental acuity? Any concerns at all?
From what I've seen of President Biden, and I was with him in Normandy for the 80th anniversary of D-Day, his acuity is consistent and strong, and I think that as Commander-in-Chief, he's continuing to do his duties with the same kind of effective knowledge and awareness that he's brought to this office for the last 3.5 years.
At this point, I would say to the president, the challenge is to you. Show us in the way you campaign that you can effectively beat Donald Trump. Show us that you're a good candidate, and I believe he is, and that what we saw in that debate night is not typical of what we're going to see in the future.
And we have some breaking news. Former U.S. Senator Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma has died. He was 89 years old. The family says in a statement that the Republican had a stroke during the 4th of July holiday and died this morning. Inhofe was a powerful fixture in state politics for decades. He questioned the narrative that climate change was caused by human activity and called the theory, quote, the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people, unquote. As Oklahoma's senior U.S. Senator, he was a staunch supporter of the state's military installations. Inhofe was elected to a 5th Senate term in 2020 and stepped down in early 2023. Next, Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg today as heads of state gather in Washington, D.C. to celebrate NATO's 75th anniversary.
Suffice to say, we have an alliance that is stronger than it's been, larger than it's been, and ready to deal with the challenges of our time. And the secret of NATO's success has been the commitment that those 12 countries made to each other, and that now 32 countries are making to each other. And that is an attack on one is an attack on all.
The leaders of all NATO members are expected to be at the summit. With Russia intensifying its war with Ukraine, President Biden is expected to announce new commitments to support Ukraine. Blinken already announced earlier today that NATO allies would provide more than $7 million in equipment for female Ukrainian soldiers. NATO is also preparing for a potential second Trump administration. The former president has repeatedly threatened to pull the U.S. out of NATO if other member states fail to meet their financial requirements. National Security spokesperson John Kirby said that the U.S. and several of its allies have big announcements planned for the summit. Later in the afternoon, President Biden will give a speech at the NATO summit. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao will have more on this in our Capitol Report at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific. Moving on, a new federal report shows middlemen are influencing how much you pay for prescription drugs. The Federal Trade Commission finds that this group controls more than 80% of the drug prices in America.
They're called pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs. They negotiate drug prices between pharmacies and consumers. The PBMs negotiate large discounts and fees with drug makers, create a list of medications that insurance covers, and reimburse pharmacies for prescriptions. The FTC report shows that the 3 largest PBMs control 79% of American drug prescriptions. Federal regulators say these middlemen are greatly profiting at the expense of consumers and smaller pharmacies. The 3 biggest PBMs are United Health Group's Optum unit, CVS Health Corp's CVS Caremark, and Cigna Corp's Express Scripts. CVS and Express Scripts denounced the report. The federal agency also investigated 3 other PBMs. The 6 companies together control 90% of the U.S. prescription drug market. The report also finds that PBMs set what medications insurance can cover, the price, and what pharmacies patients can use to fill their prescriptions, with no clarity or public liability. The FTC suggests tighter regulations to control how these companies operate.
Columbia University has removed 3 deans from their posts for text messages that allegedly include anti-Semitic language. University President Manoush Shafiq made the announcement yesterday in a letter. She said the incident took place in May. The Dean of Undergraduate Student Life, the Associate Dean for Student and Family Support, and the Vice Dean and Chief Administrative Officer of Columbia College were texting during a panel discussion on Jewish life at an alumni event. A spectator sitting behind one of the deans secretly took photos of their phone screens. The text messages were allegedly dismissive of the Jewish students' complaints and reportedly suggested Jews were trying to take advantage of the moment for its fundraising potential. The Columbia president denounced the conversation. She said it disturbingly touched on ancient anti-Semitic tropes. It is unclear if the university will continue to employ the 3 former deans in other positions. And re-entering society after years in prison can be a real challenge for many women. Groups like Volunteers of America and Women to Women provide crucial support. NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with the 2 organizations about how they help with the transition.
Angela King is the director of Volunteers of America, Texas. The organization has been helping former inmates for over 100 years. King says the will to change is crucial.
The first thing is a person saying, you know, I need to do something different. Having that insight sometimes comes when a person is incarcerated for the first time. Sometimes it's the third or fourth time a person has gotten in trouble with the legal system that they kind of have that awakening.
Volunteers of America provides a trauma-informed curriculum to help those who are ready to make the leap.
And so you have folks who've already experienced trauma, perhaps been sexually abused or exploited or even trafficked as young children. And then they enter the prison system, they get re-traumatized. They often have children that they're separated from. So it focuses on helping people identify the trauma in their lives and realize how it's impacted their decision making.
King says breaking the cycle of abuse is essential.
That is such a huge issue for women, is a lack of confidence. And so then they re-enter relationships that are abusive or that, you know, are just going to perpetuate that cycle that they've had for years in their lives. And so we really focus on breaking those cycles.
Another key service VOA Texas provides is helping women regain lost job certifications or acquiring new ones.
But oftentimes we are faced with folks who are really going out into employment for the first time as a sober person who can contribute to an employment situation. So we're trying to get folks into jobs that they have a career ladder and a career path. We train people as what we call patient care techs for hospital settings or long-term care settings.
Amy Ichikawa spent 5 years at the Central California Women's Facility in Chochilla. She and others founded the organization Women to Women to help former female inmates struggling to reintegrate into the free world. Ichikawa believes the support of others who have walked in your shoes is a big help.
There's just things that people who haven't been in prison don't understand. And you don't want to put pressure on your relationships and try and force people to understand because they can't understand something they didn't experience. And
she says that many women face intense anxiety returning home after decades in prison.
The workforce, trying to find places that you're going to be able to make a living wage is complicated. The anxiety of fitting in, having to buy regular clothes.
Many women experience delayed PTSD after being released from prison.
Everybody has that moment where, and it happens at different times for everyone, where you realize the world, you know, kept turning while you were gone, and your place is not here anymore, and you have to kind of dig it out for yourself and create a new one.
Picking up the pieces to start a new life after prison is challenging, but organizations like Volunteers of America and Women to Women help people start off on the right foot. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Chinese media reports revealing scandals in the oil industry. At least 2 state-owned entities have been found using oil tankers to transport both coal-derived oil and edible oil without any cleaning procedures in between.
The practice was first revealed in an investigative report by local media in Beijing. Chinese state broadcaster CCTV condemned the practice, calling it immoral, adding that the mixed usage of the tankers is just like poisoning. To save on costs, many operators don't clean the tankers when switching contents between edible and inedible oils. An official document issued 11 years ago shows Chinese local authorities instructed the oil industry not to illegally mix the use of oil tankers. Some Chinese internet users say this is a common hidden practice in the industry that has allegedly been going on for nearly 2 decades. Associate professor at the University of Technology Sydney, Feng Changyi, said this practice only proves that there's a lack of respect for human life in China.
When we come back, Boeing sales are down substantially. The company said it just sold 14 new jets in the past month, mostly freighter planes. And House Republicans are unsatisfied with the Treasury's handling of sanctions against U.S. adversaries. How the Secretary answered their questions today after the break.
25 years of oppression. This July 20th marks another year of persecution of Falun Gong adherents in China. Watch thousands of people commemorating the victims this anniversary. Join us for NTD's live coverage of the 2024 Rally and March to end the persecution of Falun Gong.
One in 5 children worldwide are faced with the reality of living without food. No family dinners, no special treats, not enough energy to play. All around the world, hunger is affecting children's physical and mental health. Toddlers are suffering from acute malnutrition, which stunts their growth. Kids are forced to drop out of school so they can help support their families. Conflict, inflation, and climate have ignited the worst famine in our lifetime. And we are fed up. Fed up that hunger devours dreams. Fed up that hunger destroys joy. Fed up with the fact that hunger eats childhood. Help us feed the futures of children all over the world by visiting getfedupnow.org. For as little as $10 a month, you can join Save the Children as we support children and families in desperate need of our help. Now is the time to get fed up and give back. When you join the cause, your $10 monthly donation can help communities in need of life-saving treatments and nutrients, prevent children from dropping out of school, support our work with communities and governments to help children go from short-term surviving to long-term thriving. And now, thanks to special government grants, every dollar you give can multiply up to 10 times the impact. That means more food, water, medicine, and help for kids around the world. You'll also receive a free tote bag to share your support for children in need. Having your childhood eaten away by hunger is unimaginable. Get fed up. Call us now or visit getfedupnow.org.
Do you know that Cars for Compassion is the best way to donate your car? Through this non-profit program, you can not only help us keep bringing the world independent and daringly truthful journalism, but also significantly impact the life of somebody who needs a vehicle. The Epoch Times fights misinformation and big tech censorship by being independent and unbound to advertisers. Every single contribution to Cars for Compassion is a powerful endorsement of our unwavering mission. All you have to do is go to carsforcompassion.org and let us know about your car, and we'll schedule a pickup time and email you a tax-deductible receipt. To do this, just click the link below. Support truth, compassion, and hope. Donate your car right now at www.carsforcompassion.org.
After 15 years of smoking, Eva Marie quit. There's a new lung cancer screening that could save her life. You stopped smoking. Now start screening. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Welcome back. Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen testified today before the House of Representatives Financial Services Committee on the state of the international financial system. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez joins us live from the Capitol. Luis, what can you tell us about today's hearing, and what was Secretary Yellen's main message to congressmen?
Of course, Chris, as you mentioned, this Tuesday, Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen testified during 3 hours at the House Financial Services Committee. Janet Yellen's main message to lawmakers this Tuesday was centered around the Treasury's efforts to counter China and Russia from gaining access to advanced technologies. Let's listen to an exchange between Chairman Patrick Van-Henry and Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen.
We recognize that in artificial intelligence, it's widely used for many different purposes. And the regime that we've proposed is really oriented toward those uses that are clearly national security risks.
So why not just name names and say, don't invest in these companies? Isn't that the clearest route to stem the flow of capital going into Chinese technology? Let me give you another example.
As we just saw there, Chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, Patrick McHenry, was questioning Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen on the list of companies that should not receive U.S. investment due to restrictions on AI technologies. Now, Democratic ranking member Maxine Waters, Congresswoman from California, actually used her opening statements to congratulate the Biden administration and Secretary Yellen's administration of the Treasury Department. Let's listen.
I don't have much of a question to ask you. I want to thank you, basically, for the work that you have done. The Biden administration has forgiven $144 billion in federal student loans for nearly 4 million bars. On the other hand, the MAGA operatives have made their priority loud and clear. This Project 2025 is diabolical.
As we heard, Democratic ranking member Congresswoman Maxine Waters, the Democrat from California, used part of her opening statement to congratulate the Biden administration, but also to address the general election of this year and criticize what they call Project 2025. Chris, so we obviously saw some differences in the reception that House Democrats and House Republicans had to the testimony from Janet Yellen.
And Luis, what were House Republicans' priorities during today's hearing?
Of course, Chris, I spoke with the vice chair of the Financial Services Committee, Congressman of French Hill, the Republican from Arkansas, and his main concern was how Russia, Vladimir Putin's Russia, was bypassing U.S. sanctions. Let's listen to what Vice Chairman of the Financial Services Committee, Congressman French Hill, had to say about this.
The banking system and the energy system in Russia should be sanctioned even more aggressively. And finally, I asked Secretary Yellen today about the Repo Act. I think they could be, again, stronger, more forceful, and more aggressive on that point.
Congressman French Hill, the vice chair of the committee, focused his line of questioning on the Repo Act and demanding that the Treasury Department be more aggressive in repossessing frozen Russian assets abroad to finance the defense of Ukraine. I also had the chance to speak with Congresswoman Young Kim, from the Republican from California, and her line of questions centered on China. Let's listen.
That PRC is not a developing country. It is the second largest world economy only after the United States, yet they game the system by going to World Bank, IMF, and they get the lowest interest rate loans, only to turn around and reinvest that in the truly developing countries. This is how they game the system and use that as a debt diplomacy.
So, Chris, we saw House Republicans grill Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen pretty hard on issues surrounding Russia, China, Iran, and the enforcement of sanctions. But we also did see bipartisan concern over the traffic and flow of fentanyl through the U.S. southern border. And we saw House Democrats question the Treasury Department Secretary on what the task force were doing to sanction Chinese agents involved in this flow of narcotics to the U.S. Chris, back to you.
Luis Martinez in Washington, thank you very much. Federal aviation safety officials mandate inspections for over 2,600 Boeing 737 airplanes due to potential issues with passenger oxygen masks. The FAA issued an airworthiness directive. It requires operators to inspect the oxygen generators in the passenger service units to ensure they are properly positioned. Out-of-position generators could prevent masks from delivering oxygen during emergencies. The directive affects multiple Boeing 737 models. Reports indicated that the adhesive failures on thermal pads caused the generators to shift. Inspections must be completed within 150 days, and airlines are prohibited from installing affected parts. This order follows Boeing's recent plea deal over the 737 MAX crashes, requiring the company to pay fines and invest in safety programs. And in more Boeing plane news, a 757 Boeing jet operated by United Airlines lost landing gear wheel on Monday when it took off from Los Angeles. The plane later landed safely at its planned destination in Denver with no injuries. The wheel from United Flight 1001 was recovered in Los Angeles. United says it is investigating what caused this event. The aircraft involved in Monday's incident was nearly 30 years old. It was a nearly 30-year-old 757. Boeing ended production of 757 in 2004. In March, another Boeing jet headed for Japan lost a tire midair following takeoff from San Francisco. It later landed safely at Los Angeles International Airport. And the Federal Reserve Chair testifies before Congress, and plane maker Boeing saw its gross sales drop during the first part of this year. Here is NTD's Don Ma with today's Business Matters.
Boeing said it sold just 14 new jets in the past month, with most of those coming as freighter sales. And one of those was to replace the plane that saw a door plug blow out mid-flight just over 6 months ago. It sold just 3 737 MAX jets, 2 to an unidentified customer and 1 to Alaska Airlines to replace the plane that had a door plug blowout. So it marked one of its best sales months of the year, but it still ended the first half of 2024 with gross sales down 70% from a year ago. The 14 gross sales are up from the only 4 sold in May and 7 in April, but it's down 95% from the 304 gross orders it took in June of 2023. Meanwhile, Powell testified before the Senate Banking Committee on Tuesday. He said that inflation remains above the U.S. Central Bank's 2% target, but has been improving in recent months, and more good data would strengthen the case for a Federal Reserve interest rate cut. Powell says that the U.S. is no longer an overheated economy with a job market that has cooled considerably from its pandemic-era extremes. As well, the chair noted the Fed is now also concerned about risks to the job market and economy should rates remain too high for too long. Powell's testimony is his latest in a semi-annual round of hearings on monetary policy with questions from senators following his remarks. He will appear before the House Financial Services Committee tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Back to you.
Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Chris Beers. See you tomorrow.